Hello, all you cats and kittens. This is Kevin Fink and
Tavel Bristol Joseph.
We're excited to cook with you today. And
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be living the moment of it, right?
I love it.
And honestly, hopefully, if you don't know what we're talking about, a lot of time has passed, and you're in a much better place, hopefully, than when we filmed this,
Right.
and we were under quarantine.
Absolutely. And it's crazy because now we have the time to show people outside of our restaurant, outside of our business, how to do some of the things that we do in our restaurants on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty special.
This is, what we're making today is actually a retired dish.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's run its course.
Yeah.
Might come back later, I don't know.
Well, I by popular demand, potentially. But I mean, people ask us all the time, like, you know, are you going back through that? But really, at Emmer Rye, which is where this dish is from, we come up with about 250 organic dishes every single year. That sounds like a lot, but it's really about 5 a week. And our chefs think through that every single day.
For sure.
And you know, I mean, our first year we did 400. And that's when Tavel lost his hair and I started to go bald.
See? It's gone. Hey, I want to tell the story about how we created this dish.
Oh, please,
Yeah. All right. So here we go, right? And I'm probably not going to tell it exactly the way because it was a long day. We were at the farmer's market.
I will collaborate.
You'll
with
collaborate.
The story.
Thank you. So this is what's happening, right? So we are at the farmer's market, and we're going to all the stores, introducing ourselves to all these local farmers and ranchers. And in that process we're going through, I'm starting to get hungry. So I ran up to this one stall. It was like, they were selling a lot of Indian goods, spices and stuff.
I think we had left, and you were like saw it, and we pulled
over.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So then we go, and I'm like, and being at the market, it really just reminded me of home. And when I say home, I don't mean Tucson, Arizona. I don't mean New York. New York is like 50-50 home, because there's a lot of families there. But I mean where I was born and raised, which is South America, Georgetown, Guyana.
You're not from New York?
No, I'm not from New York, but my family's there, so I love New York. New York is my second home.
Second home.
Second home.
First home is where?
First home is Georgetown, Guyana.
Where's Austin?
Austin comes in my third home.
Austin's third for you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Austin is first for me. I want Austin to know Austin is my first home, despite the fact that I'm from Tucson. First home is Austin.
Oh, wow. Good for you, man. Good for you. So we're there, and you know, because being around the farmers and stuff, it just reminded me of home a lot. And my grandmother used to cook pretty much every Sunday. We would sit around and she would cook, and she would have our classes basically where we would be helping her in the kitchen. That was the only day we were allowed to help her.
Yeah.
And most of those days was roti. And the reason why, it's like flour, sugar, salt. So when you don't have a lot, this goes a long way.
Sure.
So she would make these dishes. So anyway, so I'm at the market, I spoke to the woman. She didn't have it, but she's like, hey, go up the block. I remember, go up the block at this other store and they have roti. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. I'm like, bet. So we jumped in the car and we drove like a block away to the other store. Went into the store.
It's like in a gas station.
Yeah, it was weird. And then I was like, I went in and I asked the guy, I'm like, hey, you got roti? And he gave me naan. And he said, this is roti.
I don't think we got anything, right?
Yo, he gave it to me in the store, and I was like, this is not roti, man.
And the look of despair on Tavel's face.
Very disappointed.
And he's, okay, well, never mind. Let's just go.
Yeah.
So we got back in the car, right? I'm in the back seat at this point. I don't sit in the back seat very much, but you know, sometimes. And I was like, what's the difference?
Yeah. What's the difference between roti and naan per se?
No, because it's between roti and roti.
And that's the other thing, because even, it's funny you say that, because all the different countries in the Caribbean has a version of roti.
Yeah.
Like the Trinidadians, they put split peas in theirs. And then like Jamaica, they would put like spinach. They call it callaloo.
Yeah.
They put that in there. And some people put lard, some people put butter. Like there's all of these different representation of this thing that came from India and made its way throughout South America. That's really special and cool.
And really through a lot of Asia as well. I mean,
that too.
While these things are somewhat less common in the U.S., they're way more common than they used to be.
Yeah.
They're some of the most common breads in the world. And we're going to make them from you. So without further ado, let's make some roti. First of all, get yourself some blue gloves, not black or anything like that, but the blue gloves, which are really nice. And of course, if you're at home, you can do it with your hands. But for me here, I'm going to set you up with all the things that you need here. So a couple ingredients for you here. Organic all-purpose flour. This is 400 grams of this. 320 grams of water. This is actually just above room temperature here. 12 grams of baking powder. 8 grams of salt. 80 grams of whole grain red fife that has been milled down and not sifted. And then we have our butter here, which is 32 grams of that. Really important with any of these recipes, mix your dry, mix your wet, mix your dry into your wet. So we're gonna do that first, right? Perfect. So flour.
That mill grain, what does that do, Kevin?
Good question. So what we're doing here is we're taking the wheat berry and we're actually pulverizing it. And so the germ, the bran, and the endosperm are all what reside in that. So traditionally, white flour is just the endosperm, right? So starch and sugar, it's a lot easier to kind of process here. Here we have the germ and the bran. There's a lot more flavor, there's a lot more enzymatic activity. It's easier for us to process and digest. There's enzymes that are like extracted out or that die in this process, which is I think why we all know that it's easier if we eat sourdough bread, our stomach takes that better, right? So then water and butter. Nice. So if you have somebody next to you, which I luckily do, you can
there we go.
hand this
I'll take
to them.
Care of that.
Take it off screen really quickly here. I'm doing this with my hand, right? A lot of times you want to mix it with a fork or a whisk just to make sure it's really even. And that is incredibly important here. You can also do it by hand. And I think it's really important for any of the recipes that we're making for this series that we're making things that we want to be delicious if they're 10% off or 20% off. Because I think everybody has had those times where they're trying to follow a recipe at home and whether the chef doesn't tell you exactly what to put the burner at or where to mix these sort of things, and it comes out looking really different. And that can be discouraging at times. So for these are great recipes because they're going to be delicious no matter what. So now I have my wet and I have my dry. And go ahead and mix this in. Notice I just didn't mix it at all to start there, right? So I just have it sitting. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to lightly agitate it. At this point, I'm going to bring the dough together. The difference with bringing a dough like this together versus like a bread is I actually don't want a lot of gluten here. And the reason I'm not trying to work gluten is because I'm going to let it rest together and then I'm going to work it 2 more times. And if I work it too much, then I'm going to end up getting a recipe that just comes together too much and is too tight on my palate as opposed to light and flaky. So you can kind of see here, right?
Come together nice. And this
see how it's tearing still, right?
this method, this is the straight method here. So in baking,
just to kind of show you all.
In baking, there's a couple of methods that is really important. Like for example, the sponge method where you whip your egg whites and then you fold in your flour. This is a straight method where you put your liquid together, you add your dry in, and you mix it all together right away. There's no waiting process.
Right.
So we call this the straight method.
So I let that rest for a little while, which is I have this dough here.
Nice.
Luckily, that has been rested. I would say at least 30 minutes. Cover it with a little bit of plastic there. It makes it really nice. The trick of putting on gloves after taking off gloves is a really difficult thing to do.
I can see that, man.
Yeah, non-powderized gloves, very nice here. I think it's really important to rest the dough, let it hydrate, let it relax a little bit. Notice I just turned it and I flipped it right away. So this makes 7 pieces. So if I want to just do it like so.
7 pieces.
7 pieces.
That's enough for 2 people in my house, man.
Well, And I'm actually going to have, you know, they look about even. I could weigh them. They weigh out to about 115 grams if you want to be exact for that sort of thing. But like here, you get like a, you know, Tavel portion, you get like a little Hudson portion, you know, like, you know, what kind of works out there. So I'm going to take some of these and put them over here. So I'm just going to take, you don't need to do it on a wood board, you can do it on plastic, but I like doing it on wood just because I think it feels more natural to work dough into wood because they'll actually push into it better, they'll glaze a little bit better. So I'm just going to take this, get a little bit of fat on my gloves.
And the pores in the wood actually holds the dough, and it helps you in that process of mixing it well.
So I'm just spreading it out by hand. I used to do this, remember when we did this with a rolling pin?
Oh yeah.
Now we realize that that's not as necessary.
Yeah, nice.
At which point I'm going to take this butter and olive oil mixture, and I'm quite liberally on here, and I'm going to mix it with my glove. How much butter? A lot of butter.
Yeah.
Cut right to the center, and then I'll pick this up and I'll start folding it onto itself. So
nice.
This is a simple version of lamination. It's not like, you know, croissants or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it
is lamination. Yeah.
But it is very much so, right? And so then I've got this like tube of dough or a cone, and I'm going to pull the edge. I'm going to fold this back in. I'm going to fold it back in, fold it back in, fold it back in.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're creating these layers of dough and butter, which after we roll it out, it's probably going to create about, I would say, about 8 different layers within that thin dough, which is going to be really special.
And then right now, even more. So I'm going to stick my finger in that, and I set the layers by putting my thumb right there.
Yeah, yeah. And so this process right here, this is basically what we were talking about when we say creating layers. Because now by pressing that out and making that flat surface, think about a croissant. Where you're putting fat in between each layer. This is a faster way of being able to make something. So now this is more of a laminated dough. It moved from just being one dough ball to now a laminated version. So you're gonna have these pockets of just like really flavorful butter. And we know, man, toasted butter tastes real good.
Toasted butter tastes very, very good. And notice I haven't like clarified this at all. There's milk solids in here.
Yeah.
This is kind of impure. I think it's really important to recognize that we're not doing like a French technique of this, right? This is a quick way of laminating. And we don't need to do something that is like an old school proper croissant here, right? So the butter is not necessarily cold. The dough itself is going to temper it. We are going to lose some of it. And that's why, honestly, there's a lot of it that's still on my board here. And I feel okay about that. Okay.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Now, I've made these. I'm letting them sit. They're here for my recipe. Again, I'm going to let that dough rest. Here we are. 3 of these beautiful ones. I'm going to take this now and just start pounding it. You don't want to make it too pounded out because I want to enjoy that it has, for me, I like the center to have this nice texture to it. You can see that it's shrinking back on me a little bit. That just means that the dough hasn't fully rested. That's okay. It's going to shrink a little bit when that happens. Don't stress that.
Okay. All right. There we go. So we got our hot pan here. We use cast iron. I think it's better because it has like this even, it transfers the heat evenly throughout the metal, which is what we want for our roti.
If I was just cooking this on my own, I would now be pounding one out because it's important while he's cooking it, you don't need to mess with it right away. I think that's the most important aspect with all of these. So notice that first flip that he did, right?
Yeah.
That is a technique that we learned here, and the reason it almost sets the top like a souffle, and it'll allow it to take whatever is in that pan and push the heat into it at first. So if you get your pan really hot, which what we want here to get better rise, it would burn the base.
Right.
So because we put it on and then turned it right away, now we can get it really, really hot and crispy, but more even to that. And we'll flip it back over here in a little bit then.
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, it's starting to look really nice. Yeah. Look at the height that you're getting.
Got some heights, and then we got these caramelized clusters around there. That height is just that fluffiness that's happening. So the fat is in between each layer. As the fat heats up, it separates the layers, which is what you want. And then out here you have this beautiful caramelization.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm just going to flip this one more time.
Look at that.
Because I want to get a little bit more color on this in this area. And it's also, you know what's important with this too is understanding your heat. So I have this burner. You want to be at a medium to high heat. And then, Kev, while I cook this, you want to go through that?
All right, so very important here, right? So here's the little trick that we've learned, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna put just a touch more into this, and then you're gonna actually clap the dough, which is almost counterintuitive when you're making dough, because what it's gonna do is it's going to break those layers open. A lot of times you can do that by hand. We, of course, don't want to handle too much of your food in a restaurant, so we found a really easy way to do it. But you can see how the layers have kind of like broken apart here. And it's one of my absolute favorite things. Ooh. Yeah, there you go.
A little more fat. Perfect.
So, look at how beautiful this is, right? You can see the flakiness of it, huh?
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Right?
Wow. That's a good one, man.
Isn't that nice?
That's really nice.
I'm gonna have some.
Yeah. All right.
I
This
miss
is
this so
coming along
much.
really good. And don't share some, man. Let me get in
Oh,
here.
you're cooking. You're good, huh? You have the curry ready for it.
I got to work on that.
I hope you all enjoyed. Please make this at home. It's incredibly addictive.
Oh, yeah.
And it will convert you really, really easily. If you don't have the whole wheat flour, just use more of the white flour for you. The recipe won't be quite as delicious, but it will still be really, really delicious. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.